Create a business process for hiring an employee. No matter how large or small your company, prior to hiring an employee, there should be some sort of regular process your company follows to hiring that employee. Your process should lay out what homework your HR department should do prior to hiring. Proper planning can raise your chances with hiring an employee who is a good fit for your available position and a good fit for your company. Use the information in this video as a guide to help you create your company's unique new hiring process. Take a proactive approach to hiring employees in general. Start by forecasting business growth and comparing it to the number of employees you currently have. If you're planning to scale up your business, estimate the number of employees you will need to comfortably scale that up. Decide what experience level you want to hire. Someone who is trainable or someone with years of experience. Decide on what salary you will be paying that new employee. If you plan to grow your company, take the additional step and forecast the amount of annual revenue generated or saved by the new employee. And don't forget to include profit for your company. Refrain from using the term overqualified when speaking about applicants, since this could be used to describe older candidates, which may be looked upon as age discrimination. Plan your interview process and strategy. For example, will there be another employee who will be sitting in with you during the interview process? Create job descriptions that clearly define duties, but that's flexible enough to bend when the company needs the manpower. Include all expectations, work hours, education experience, dress codes, number of people who will be supervised. Is there any heavy lifting involved? Where will the actual job be located? Submit your job posting and include a deadline for submitting that resume. Deadlines create a sense of urgency. A job posting can consist of the job description, what information you would like the applicant to submit, like either a resume or a LinkedIn address, and your human resources contact information. Develop a strategy for eliminating applicants that may not fit in with your company's goals and objectives. I recommend business owners be on the lookout for the following: job hoppers or people who can't seem to keep a job long term. This could be a sign that that applicant would not be at your company long term, meaning a big waste of time and money. Major gaps in employment, especially without explanation. There may be underlying reasons why the other employers won't hire this applicant. Unproven self-employment claims. Proving self-employment can be tricky. I recommend looking for business websites, check the Secretary of State office to see if the business is registered, business literature like flyers and such, and ask for references from current or former clients with established companies. Unclear descriptions of past job duties may not provide you with a clear image of what the applicant's prior job duties were. This is where I recommend creating unique interview questions for each applicant. Pre-screen the applicant with a pre-screening interview. This can be done via email or over the phone. And don't be afraid to ask any questions prior to requesting a face-to-face interview, like salary expectations. I had an applicant that was a great fit for the company, but when I inquired about her salary expectations, she was way more than the average for the area in which I worked, so I passed on her. Why waste your time and the applicant's time? I recommend conducting all interviews within the same time period so all the information gleaned is fresh. I would set aside a day or two and schedule interviews back to back with at least an hour break in between for notes, any company issues that may come up that day, etc. Keep the questions focused on prior work history and overall experience related to employment. Don't ask closed-end questions that require a yes or no answer. Allow the applicant to elaborate on all answers as much as possible, as long as they stick to the subject. Don't be afraid to ask the applicant why they left their prior job. Ask the applicant if they have any questions for you. If necessary, call for a second interview. If your company believes the individual may be a great fit, then perform your background checks, reference checks, criminal history, etc. Create that job offer letter and attachments. Always submit in writing or via email with a deadline. Use the information in this video as a guide to help you create your company's unique employee hiring process. There is always room for improvement, so add or omit steps as needed. I recommend creating a pre-hiring checklist to make sure everyone follows the established process. The bottom line is to ensure that each newly hired employee is carefully evaluated before, during, and after the process. A new hire checklist should contain a list of documents and/or processes to be completed when you hire a new employee. I'm going to share my list with you. Please take this information and use it as a benchmark to customize and create your own new hire checklist. I won't review these standard IRS documents because these are documents that every employer should already know about, and you can also get updated versions of these on the website irs.gov. A good employment application can help protect your company against employees who embellish or just outright lie on their resumes. A signed offer letter should have been submitted to the job applicant, signed, and returned back to the employer. This is a form I created to list the contact information for next of kin for any employee should they be hurt at work and unable to speak. This form is official notification that tells the employer that the employee would like their salary direct deposited. It also ensures that you give the correct information, the correct account number, the correct bank. These forms are typically available from the company in which you sign up to do your direct deposits. This agreement allows for employers to deduct money from an employee's salary, such as health insurance premiums, any installment loan payments between the company and the employee, and any other deductions along those lines. Drug alcohol testing agreements simply state that should the employee be out running a company errand and is involved in a wreck, that you can insist that the employee is drug tested, especially if you have company insurance, automobile insurance. That may be a requirement. I created a customized alcohol policy agreement for a client. It is a very lengthy policy, and it helps to safeguard the company against employees who are drinking alcohol while at your company function. This agreement protects the company against the improper use of a credit card. There are times when employees have to have a company credit card for employer-related expenses. This agreement protects the company against any wage overpayment. And again, this agreement, in combination with the wage deduction authorization agreement, helps keep all of that in accordance with the Texas Workforce Commission. Among other things, this document informs employees that they are not to expect privacy when using company-owned internet access or a company-owned computer, and that these things should be used in accordance with company policy. In addition, it informs employees that at any time the company may install video cameras in non-private areas. There are times when employees are allowed to take home equipment such as laptops, cell phones, and things of that nature, and these items are still company property. This document lets the employees know that even though they are removing these items from the company, that they still must adhere to the company policy guidelines as it relates to using the computer, using the cell phone, or whatever it is that the employee is taking home to use for work. When it comes to non-competes, non-disclosures, non-disparagements, and those types of agreements, I recommend that you consult a licensed, qualified employment attorney, because those are very, very important documents, and I would not allow an employee to work from day one without signing those types of agreements, because that protects your company and its assets. A new hire checklist should include at least a discussion of the following: payday, lunch breaks, anti-harassment policies, PTO or vacation sick time accrual, paid holidays, and most important, wage garnishments. You must ask a new employee if they are subject to any court-ordered or wage garnishments like child support, student loan reimbursed payments, things of that nature. You must document that you did ask them about it, and I will keep that as part of the new hire checklist. After the waiting period, whatever the waiting period is for your company, 30 days, 60 days, I would ask the applicant about insurance benefits enrollment or waiver. Insurance premium costs should also be discussed, and your company's 401k program. You have one employee. Should you be concerned with writing a job description? Let's get into it. I had a question come in from a subscriber asking if she should consider writing a job description for her very first employee. Here is why I highly recommend creating a job description for every employee. It doesn't matter if you have one employee or if you have 1,000 employees. Your employee would expect to see a clear outline of job expectations, and this will help the employee throughout their tenure at your company. As an employer, you can use that job description to base your interview questions. As the employee progresses in their job, you can use that job description to determine areas that they need training and development, especially when the job performance is in question. The job description will ensure that the job duties are aligned with your company's vision. And finally, it could protect you legally. Based on the job description, should that have been an exempt position, a non-exempt position? Why was an applicant selected or not selected? Once you write a job description, don't just put it in a drawer and never look at it again. A job description, just like your employee handbook, is a living, breathing part of your company. Please set aside a couple times a year or update the job description as the employee progresses and adds duties and responsibilities to his or her position. My 2 cents. As an HR professional, you cannot sit there and tell an employee that he or she is not doing a good job without a clear job description outlining duties, responsibilities, and expectations. No matter what size company you have, always ensure that your employees have clear job descriptions. A well-written job description can help you save time when posting a job description, setting employee expectations, identifying areas that need training, performance reviews, compensation, and more. Think of a job description as a blueprint for that position. Do your best to paint a picture of the day-to-day responsibilities of the job. A job description is in no way meant to be an all-inclusive list of each and every duty an employee or applicant will perform. It is important to add a disclaimer stating this at the top of the page, preferably in the upper margin area so it's the first information viewed. Here's an example. The following statements are intended to describe the general nature and level of work being performed. This description is not intended to be construed as an exhaustive list of all responsibilities, duties, and skills required of personnel so classified. A job summary is just that. Discuss the overall objective of the job position. What is it that you want the job position to accomplish? Start the job description summary with an action verb. An example of a job summary could say, maintain overall cleanliness and general safety of our office property, our building, or wherever you conduct business. This should be no longer than about 4 sentences. Here is where you discuss the actual job duties in detail, line by line. Inform the applicant or employee with the tasks that are minimally expected of them. It's a good idea to add the phrase, included but not limited to, in case a job duty is left off or later added to the description. Some examples are sweep and mop all the office, hallways and bathrooms, empty trash cans, lock office when finished, set alarm, etc. These could be occasional duties that may be included in the job position on occasion. Example of this could be restocking bathroom tissue, informing management when to order more cleaning supplies, or looking for safety hazards while performing job duties. List the name and title of the position that supervises this job position. If you have a large company, note the office location or area where to find the supervisor. An example could be, your immediate supervisor is Mr. Jeff Brown, Building Operations Manager. His office is on the 2nd floor, Suite 2A. If the employee is not supervising any employees, you will note that in this area. If the employee will be supervising employees, you will list who or what department the employee will be supervising. For example, direct supervision of any temporary employees and enforce all office safety guidelines. Here is where you list the primary skills and qualifications your company requires to perform the job functions. The list I'm providing in this video are not all inclusive. Will a degree or experience be required for the position? Both? What type of degree will your company accept? List the number of years of experience you require. Will this position require the employee to work on a computer? If so, state the type of computer and skill level required. For example, intermediate working knowledge of a PC and a Mac computer are necessary for this position, or just a PC, or just a Mac. Are there any federal, state laws, or city ordinances related to the position that must be known by the employee? Will the employee need to know QuickBooks, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, Adobe, or other computer software? If so, state the level of expertise needed: basic, intermediate, advanced. Inform the employee if they will be required to have any specialized writing skills like technical or narrative. These are skills that are inherent and can aid greatly in job performance. Some examples that come to mind are analytical, problem solving, strong communication, or maintaining a calm demeanor while working under stressful conditions. Describe conditions such as majority of the time will be spent standing, bending, walking, or lifting up to 30 pounds. Also include if there will be any travel. List if the position is hourly or salary, exempt or non-exempt. Very important. Note the working hours, days that make up the work week, break periods, and if there is any overtime or additional work hours needed. Include salary amount as well as other compensation amounts such as bonuses, commissions, and other forms of payment. The last thing you want to do is waste time finding the right candidate, only to find out the salary offered is not satisfactory to the applicant. I had that happen once before. In addition, include benefits like PTO, 401k, tuition reimbursement, or whatever the benefits. Salary is no longer the end all. Flex working hours or the ability to occasionally work from home may be of more value than just salary alone. Make sure to set realistic expectations, provide as much information as possible, and emphasize how your company can help benefit the employee's life. Your job description is competing against other employers who want those qualified applicants. A well thought out, well-written job description could, in the long term, attract and keep awesome employees. Your new employee starts tomorrow. What documents are to be signed by your new employee? I'm not talking about the IRS forms. I'm talking about documents that will protect your company and its assets. Starting a professional relationship with a new employee should include a review of an employee handbook and a list of documents for that new employee to sign. These documents should cover any scenario that could happen during the tenure of that employee. Not only does it project a professional image to your newly hired employee, it protects your company and its assets from day one. Once that new employee is hired and the offer letter has been signed and returned to your office, I highly recommend sending your company's new hire packet to that employee via email. That way, the employee will have time to read and review the documents as well as ask questions prior to the first day of employment. All documents should be submitted, signed, and reviewed during orientation. Those first few days will be a busy time for a new employee. Not only that, the longer an employee stays at a company, the less chance that employee may be willing to sign new employment documents that you forgot to include on the first day of employment. Is a job application necessary when an applicant submits a resume? Let's get into it. This was another question I received from the same person who asked, should she, as an employer, request that applicants complete a job application in addition to submitting their resume? The short answer, is a job application necessary? My 2 cents, of course it is, and there are many reasons why, and that's what this video is about. You have the job applications that come from the office supply stores, and you see them on a pad. They're about $10, and remember, you pay for what you get. Some of those job applications may not protect your company in certain situations. Not only that, that job application may not be asking the right questions. It may be asking for information that your company really isn't ready to start collecting. The information on that job application may conflict with laws that are governing your state, your city, any city ordinances. So with that being said, my advice is to create your own job applications. Using a job application instead of exclusively a resume standardizes the information for all applicants. If you want to look and compare things like education and experience, you know which page to go to on that job application for each and every employee, as opposed to fishing around for it on resumes. You can see the applicant's complete professional picture in the same format. Your job application will cover information that is not covered by the applicant's resume. For example, why did you leave your last employer? Former supervisors complete information, including telephone numbers and address to the former employer. A well-written job application should verify understanding. In other words, the employee will sign a document stating that they have read and understood whatever policies and procedures that you have written in your job application. In addition, that signature can attest to certain statements. A statement claiming that the person submitting the information attests to the fact that the information is true and correct. And also that applicant, again, with that signature, that they understand that if they submit false information, that they may no longer be considered as an applicant for that position, or if they are hired and it is found out later that the information was untrue, that they could face disciplinary action, whatever your company sees fit, demotion, termination, or whatever. That will be spelled out in your customized job application. The EEOC requires certain guidelines with regard to how long your organization should keep solicited job applications on file. So please keep that in mind whenever you collect job applications, and refrain from collecting information such as social security numbers and driver's licenses, because at the end of the day, it is your company that will be responsible for securing that information, and you could be held liable if that information is compromised. Does your company have a customized job application, or do you use the generic applications at the office supply stores? Your company interviewed a number of employees for an available position, and you found the perfect employee. He or she signs all of your employment documents and starts work. Later on, you find out that the employee's resume contained information that was not true. The employee lied on the resume. Is there anything your company can do about it? Before you hire an employee, I highly recommend adding a declaration on your company's new hire documentation, like a job application, that says something to the effect that once the employee is hired by the XYZ company, if the company discovers that an employee has fabricated any experience or other information on any new hire documentation, that employee will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. In addition, I recommend implementing a new written employment policy that states something similar. If it is discovered during employment, if it's discovered anytime during employment that an employee fabricated all or part of the information contained on their new hire documents, that employee will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including immediate termination of employment. Once your company implements that new written employment policy, your company can begin taking action against the employee, and that may mean a demotion, probation, termination, or whatever your company decides. Please contact me via email if you have any questions. There are about 20 questions the TWC asks to determine if your employee is truly an employee or an independent contractor. We're going to go through some scenarios, and I'm going to talk about the employee's part, while on the other side, I will show the independent contractor's definition. Under the common law test, a worker is an employee if the purchaser of that worker service has the right to direct or control the worker, both as to the final result and as to the details of when, where, and how the work is done. Number 1, instructions. An employee receives instructions about when, where, and how the work is to be performed. Training. Employees are often trained by a more experienced employee or are required to attend meetings or take training courses. Integration. Services of an employee are usually merged into the firm's overall operation. The firm's success depends on those employees' services. Services rendered personally. An employee's services must be rendered personally. Employees do not hire their own substitutes or delegate work to them. Hiring, supervising, and paying helpers. An employee may act as a foreman for the employer, but if so, helpers are paid with employer funds. Continuing relationship. An employee often continues to work for the same employer month after month or year after year. Set hours of work. An employee may work on call or during working hours and days as set by the employer. Full-time required. An employee ordinarily devotes full-time service to that employer, or the employer may have a priority on the employee's time. Location where service is performed. Employment is indicated if the employer has the right to mandate where services are performed. Order or sequence set. An employee performs services in the order or in the sequence set by the employer. This shows control by the employer. Oral or written reports. An employee may be required to submit regular oral or written reports about the work in progress. Payment by the hour, week, or month. An employee is typically paid by the employer in regular amounts at stated intervals, such as by the hour or by the week. Payment of business and travel expenses. An employee's business and travel expenses are either paid directly or reimbursed by the employer. Furnishing tools and equipment. Employees are furnished all necessary tools, materials, and equipment by the employer. Significant investment. An employee generally has little or no investment in the business. Instead, an employee is economically dependent on the employer. Realized profit or loss. An employee does not ordinarily realize a profit or a loss in a business. Rather, employees are paid for services rendered. Working for more than one firm at a time. An employee ordinarily works for one employer at a time and may be prohibited from joining a competitor. Making services available to the public. An employee does not make his or her services available to the public except through the employer's company. Right to discharge without liability. An employee can be discharged at any time without liability on the employer's part. Right to quit without liability. An employee may quit work at any time without liability on the employee's part. These are some of the questions the Texas Workforce Commission will ask your company to determine if you have employees that you are calling independent contractors. Review all of this information to help you determine what course your business should take as it relates to the individuals who work at your company. Your company had an open position and you found the perfect candidate. Congratulations! Now what do? I'm going to help you write an offer letter. Offer letters ensure that everyone's on the same page, meaning the employer and the job candidate agree on the terms and conditions of employment, salary, payday, PTO, work hours, and other important information needed for that first day. I recommend verbally extending the job offer prior to sending an offer letter. Not only does it create a personal connection, it's exciting news for the job candidate and for your company. For the purposes of this video, we will assume that your job candidate is excited and has verbally accepted your job offer. Now, it's time to write that offer letter. Always include the day in which the offer letter was written. That may not necessarily be when you extended the verbal job offer. This includes home address, email, and cell phone number. Note how the offer letter was delivered via U.S. mail, via email. State what the letter is, offer of employment, and the date you want the job applicant to start. Confirm the offer of employment, the job title, the supervisor, exempt or non-exempt status, and compensation, both annually and broken down to bi-weekly, weekly, or monthly, however you pay your employees currently. Here's an example. We are pleased to confirm our offer of employment for you to join the blah 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 company as our whatever the job title is. In this position, you will be reporting to the name of the supervisor and the title of the supervisor. Your compensation for the salaried exempt position will be X amount of dollars annually in payments of whatever your weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever the salary is. Provide a list of benefits offered by your company. Occasional work from home days, PTO, paid holidays, health insurance, and other benefits offered. Add a second page for more details. For example, health insurance may only include medical and dental. PTO doesn't begin to accrue until after 90 days. Eligibility for the 401k program doesn't happen until 12 months of employment. Be sure to let the employee know in that offer letter that your company employs at will, and also state that the offer letter is not an employment contract and is only meant as a notification of intent to hire. For example, your company adheres to a policy of employment at will. Therefore, nothing in this offer letter alters the right for either party to terminate the employment relationship at any time for any reason. Further, this document is a letter of intent to hire, not an employment contract or agreement. State that the offer can be withdrawn after a certain amount of time and how to return the signed offer letter to your company. For example, the offer is valid for 3 days as of the date of this letter, after which this offer shall be withdrawn and void. Please confirm your acceptance of this letter by signing and returning it via email, and list the email address of the manager who is hiring the employee. Write a basic summary and provide contact information for the person the applicant can contact should they have any questions. For example, we believe your career experiences are a solid fit with our company's goals and objectives, and we sincerely hope that you will become a member of whatever your company's name. Should you have any questions, please contact the hiring person's name and their phone number, and also list their email address. Leave a place for the new employee to sign the offer letter. Attachments are very important, and they should provide additional details to anything offered as compensation, benefits, or other terms and conditions of employment. Here are some examples. PTO begins to accrue after 90 days of your date of hire. PTO is a combination of 2 weeks vacation and 4 days of sick time annually. Full-time employees in good standings will be able to accrue 2 hours each pay period. The company will contribute 50% of your insurance premiums monthly after 60 days of employment. Effective immediately upon employment, the employee will be allowed the following paid holidays. And you list your holidays: New Year's Day, Good Friday, Independence Day, whichever days you will have your company closed, and you will be paying your employees for those days off. Effective immediately upon employment. Employees can make payroll direct deposits in up to 3 different bank accounts. Employees will be able to participate in a company's investment program after 12 months of employment. Also include if you're going to match. Always include the job description as part of the offer letter to be sure everyone is on the same page as it relates to expectations. For more information on how to write a job description, watch my previous video that was posted. Please remember, the information in this video is not all inclusive. One of the most important things to remember about writing an offer letter is to include basic information the job candidate needs to start his or her new job smart. Use the information in this video as the beginning to start creating your own customized new hire letter. Here is a list of acceptable documents with pictures to complete the IRS Form I-9 as of October 31st, 2022. Here are some of the main points employers will need to keep in mind when using IRS Form I-9. Use the most recent version of the I-9 form dated 10/21/2019. Keep photocopies of the documents presented by employees in case of a later audit. There are several different acceptable documents. Employers may not insist on certain documents for I-9 purposes. Presented documents must be valid and not expired. Here is a list of documents that establish both identity and employment authorization. U.S. passport or U.S. passport card. Permanent resident card or alien registration receipt card, Form I-551. Foreign passport that contains a temporary I-551 stamp or temporary I-551 printed notation on a machine-readable immigration visa. Employment authorization document that contains a photograph, Form I-766. For a non-immigrant alien authorized to work for a specific employer because of his or her status, A, foreign passport, and B, Form I-94 or Form I-94A that has the following: the same name as the passport and an endorsement of the alien's non-immigrant status as long as the period of endorsement has not yet expired and the proposed employment is not in conflict with any restrictions or limitations identified on the form. A passport from the Federated States of Micronesia or the Republic of the Marshall Islands with Form I-94 or Form I-94A, indicating non-immigrant admission under the Compact of Free Association between the United States and the Federal States of Micronesia or Republic of the Marshall Islands. Documents that establish identity only. Driver's license or ID card issued by a state or outlying possession of the United States, provided it contains a photograph or information such as name, date of birth, gender, height, eye color, and address. ID issued by federal, state, or local government agencies or entities, provided it contains a photograph or information such as name, date of birth, gender, height, eye color, and address. School ID card with a photograph. Voter's registration card. U.S. military card or draft record. Military dependent ID card. U.S. Coast Guard Merchant Mariner card. Native American tribal document. Driver's license issued by a Canadian government authority. For persons under age 18 who are unable to present a document listed above, school record or report card, clinic, doctor, or hospital record, daycare or nursery school record. Documents that establish employment authorization. A Social Security account number card, unless the card includes one of the following restrictions: not valid for employment, valid for work only with INS authorization, valid for work only with DHS authorization. Certification of birth abroad issued by the Department of State, Form FS-545. Certification of report of birth issued by the Department of State, Form DS-1350. Original or certified copy of birth certificate issued by a state, county, municipal authority, or territory of the United States bearing an official seal. Native American tribal document. U.S. Citizen Card, Form I-197. Identification card for use of resident citizen in the United States, Form I-179. Employment authorization document issued by the Department of Homeland Security. If you have any questions, please visit irs.gov. In the state of Texas, it is not required for employers to have an employee handbook. With that being said, good written employment policies that are properly followed may help employers defend against post-termination issues and employment-related litigation. Should your company elect to create an employee handbook, all aspects of the employment relationship should be addressed. Your employee handbook should outline what your company expects from employees, such as job requirements, attendance, drug policy, weapons at work, and vacation time. Address any questions your employees may have, such as benefits, compensation, dress code, paid holidays, and other topics. Once you create your employment policies, it's generally up to the employer to define and enforce. The Employment at Will Doctrine in Texas gives employers the right to set policies and change the majority of employment policies at will, depending on the needs of the business. Now in Texas, employers can change employment policies at a moment's notice. In addition, employment policies are not regarded as binding employment contracts. An employment policy can be oral, written, or a combination of both, but ideally, all critical policies should be in writing. My recommendations on employment policies of any kind is that they all should be in writing, given the fact that humans can forget. Humans can forget details about a policy or forget the policy altogether, especially if it's not enforced. When starting to create your company's employee manual, decide what type of culture you would like to have at your workplace. Convey those goals and types of culture in your policy. If you have any previous policies and procedures, whether they were written or unwritten, determine if you will continue, eliminate, or change them. Add these to your new employee manual. Draft a preliminary document for your key personnel to review. Make any necessary changes and consult a licensed employment attorney to review the final draft. Schedule a company meeting in which each employee receives a copy of the employee handbook. I recommend reviewing each policy with the employees and answering any questions. Once you review the document, each employee should sign an acknowledgement of receipt of the employee handbook. Management should also sign that document. These documents are to be placed in each employee's folder. Finally, all supervisory personnel should be trained on how to use the employee handbook. There are some caveats. Even though employers have the right to change any employment policy at will, it is not advisable to do it without, at the minimum, attempting to give some sort of advance notice to your employees. If the policy change alters an employee's work relationship so much and so adversely that a reasonable employee would quit under the circumstances, the employer could face a loss in an unemployment claim. Employers should attempt to anticipate potential problems and think of alternatives when considering policy changes. Aside from unemployment claims, employers could also face a loss in employee morale and productivity with ill-advised or ill-timed changes. Ensure that your employees are aware of your company's employment policies, since an unknown policy does absolutely no good. Sometimes unemployment claims or litigation suits are lost if an employer is unable to show proof that the claimant had been informed of the policies he or she violated. What's worse than an unknown policy? A policy that is not followed by the company, especially with respect to disciplinary matters. When terminating an employee, please keep in mind that it's up to the employer to show that either the employee knew or should have known he or she could lose his job for the reason given. If, for example, your policy talks about 2 verbal warnings, then a written warning, then suspension, and then termination, and then the employee was terminated only after 2 verbal warnings, the employer may lose an unemployment claim or a lawsuit unless a compelling reason can be shown as to why the policy was not followed. Reliable and consistent enforcement of employment policies will also help the company defend itself in a discrimination claim, for example, or any other type of lawsuit. If, for example, an employee was terminated for an offense for which others were warned, and there was no compelling reason for treating the terminated employee differently, the employer will lose any unemployment claim or possibly lose litigation. Clearly written employment policies that are distributed to employees and properly enforced may help your company's defense against any post-termination issues. Let's talk about new hire reporting. Here are my new hire reporting best practices. Report the new hire as soon as possible. Do not assume that quarterly reporting is the same as reporting a new hire, because it's not. Use the same FEIN number to prevent any type of duplicate withholdings. If you're using the system for the first time for the state of Texas, submit all of your new hires within 90 days. And that's if you've never used the system before. It may be different in your state, so check the laws in the state where your business resides. Rule of thumb: if you give an employee a W-4, they need to go in the new hire reporting system. If you're an employer that has locations in multiple states, there is a multi-state employer registry, and it is now called the Employer Information Updates, and it's through the Department of Health and Human Services. So Nina, what happens if I don't register any employees? Well, you could be fined. Of course you can be fined. You will be fined not to exceed $25 per employee, and that's for knowingly failing to report those new hires. And if you conspire with an employee and they talk you out of registering them for whatever reason, your company can be fined not to exceed $500 per employee. Do you have any stories about individuals coming to you asking you to please don't register in the new hire database? If you have any questions, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Let's talk about new employee orientation, new employee onboarding, and why your company should do both with every new employee. I was reading a post from a LinkedIn group that I follow that discussed the topic of new employee orientation and new employee onboarding. I left a comment that it is my belief that many companies don't understand the differences between the two. And further, I believe that developing a solid new employee onboarding and new employee orientation process may help the new employee merge seamlessly into the company and its culture while increasing the chance of longer employee tenure. But let's talk about the differences between the two. A new employee orientation offers a welcome or an introduction to the new workplace. Here's where you talk about basic information such as breaks, payroll, employee handbooks, immediate supervisor, benefits, the company's mission statement, generalized job duties, on and on and on. Among other reasons, a new employee orientation is supposed to help the employee ease into their new job, address any safety issues with the position, along with reviewing those important employment policies. The new employee orientation allows the HR department to do their job, to review all of those documents, to make sure all the documents have the proper signatures, to make sure all the documents are present, and ensure that the company is complying with federal and state laws as it relates to hiring new employees. Keep in mind that a new employee orientation is different from company to company to company. And this means that your company can deploy any type of software or any other means necessary to ensure that nothing is left out. I have a good friend named Courtney, and Courtney made this incredibly awesome PowerPoint template that is to guide her through the new employee orientation process to make sure she doesn't forget anything. I think it's a really great idea. When you think about an employee orientation, think about the employee getting their feet wet as it relates to your business. When you think of employee onboarding, think about that employee jumping headfirst into the deep end of the pool as it relates to your company. New employee onboarding should equate to total immersion as it relates to your company and its culture. Depending on the company, it could last as long as you think it should last. I've read some places where employee onboarding can last up to 12 months. Let me talk about my experience as it relates to new employee onboarding. I was the operations manager at this really great company, and we had a 5-day new employee onboarding process. And that culminated into a one-on-one lunch with either myself as the operations manager or one of the owners of the company. During the lunch, I would ask specific questions to that new employee as it related to our process. I'd want some feedback. Did we do too much? Did we not do enough? What was covered? What was not covered? And what they would like to see in a future new employee onboarding process. And we would use this feedback for our next new employee onboarding. Here's my advice for any company who would like to incorporate new employee orientation and new employee onboarding. When you create a new employee onboarding or a new employee orientation process, you have to create it specifically for that employee, for that particular job function. Incorporate that new employee's work environment and take into account what you know about that new employee's personality. Ensure that that new employee is comfortable with their colleagues and make sure they have someone that they can go to for immediate help and questions. Create a new employee onboarding team. And these members may fluctuate depending on the department in which the new employee is being assigned to. Some of the responsibilities of the new employee onboarding team could include tasks such as cleaning out the new employee's desk, making sure there's no remnants of the old employee. If employees have telephones at their desk, make sure the new employee's name appears on the telephone. Decide who is going to teach the new employee what, and when are you going to hand off that new employee to the next person? If there's lunches scheduled, who's going to take that new employee to lunch to welcome them to the company? Little things like making sure their email address is active and working goes a long way, and it lets that new employee know that your company put forth effort to make them feel welcomed. Part of your company's new employee onboarding process could be that that new employee shadows a seasoned employee, especially one that performs similar duties as what the new employee will be doing. Allow all the employees involved to go out to lunch and have a group lunch and get to socialize with each other. This can allow for those informal conversations that can build personal bonds. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to new employee onboarding. New employee onboarding may involve all current employees at your company, especially if it's a small business. With that being said, every new employee, from the new senior vice president on up to the custodial engineers, should go through some form of new employee orientation process and new employee onboarding process. Does your company provide any new employee hiring processes or new employee onboarding processes, or both? Let me know in the comment section below. There are several exceptions to the employment at will doctrine. State and federal employment discrimination statutes. A discharge cannot be based on a person's race, color, religion, gender, age, national origin, disability, or citizenship. And in many states, add veteran status and sexual orientation. Protected activity. Something that the law allows an employee to do without fear of retaliation. Bringing suspected wrongdoing to the attention of competent government authorities. State and federal whistleblowing statutes. Filing various types of claims. OSHA, federal wage and hour, workers' compensation, employment discrimination, military duty, jury duty, voting, engaging in union activity. There are also a couple of common law exceptions. You can't fire someone for refusing to commit a criminal act. There's an exception to the employment at will if that discharge violates an employment agreement. Remedies for a wrongful discharge includes all kinds of legal mess for your company. Reinstatement, back and future payment of wages, promotions, punitive damage, and an injunction against any future illegal conduct. In addition to compensating the employee, your company could also be on the hook for paying the attorney fees of the employee, expert witness fees, and court costs. For more information, please contact your state's unemployment office. The Department of Labor cautions against assuming that any particular job title or position will automatically be considered exempt. That determination depends on the facts behind the work relationship, not on what the employer and the employee may call it. Regulations do make clear that employees, like company and department heads, personnel directors, executive assistants, financial experts, physicians, and company attorneys are generally considered exempt, while employees such as clerks, errand runners, secretaries, bookkeepers, inspectors, and on-the-job trainees are non-exempt. An on-the-job trainee refers to new employees or current employees in new positions within a company who undergo specific job-related training while earning whatever pay applies to new employees in such a position. In limited circumstances, however, certain trainees may be exempt from FLSA. Check with your licensed employment attorney if you need further clarification. In general, anyone performing line duties as the primary part of their job will be considered non-exempt and thus entitled to overtime pay if they work more than 40 hours in a week. It is clear that understanding which employees are exempt and which are non-exempt requires much more than just looking at a title and a salary. Companies should do periodic reviews of their exempt and non-exempt positions to ensure that changes in job duties or pay practices have not created changes in exempt and non-exempt status as well. The requirements for record keeping centers around 1. Maintaining certain kinds of records. 2. Keeping those records in a certain format readily available for inspection. And 3. Keeping the records for a specified period of time. Please note that the records maintained in an electronic format my preferred method of record keeping, are permissible as long as those records can be printed out in an easily readable and usable format upon a government or court request. Some payroll records are required to be kept only 2 years. Other payroll records must be kept for 3 years under the federal FLSA law after the date of the last paycheck. If you live in Texas like I do, please watch this next one. For us living in the state of Texas, you must keep all records related to employees' wages and other compensation, as well as all unemployment tax records for at least 4 years. So basically, if you live in Texas, keep all this stuff for at least 4 years after the date on the employee's final paycheck. Three years. Keep all payroll, benefit, and any leave-related documentation for at least 3 years after the conclusion of the leave event. Maintain all I-9 records for at least 3 years following the date of hire or for 1 year following the employee's last day of work, whichever point is reached last. Again, Texas, because of the TWC laws, I recommend keeping this information along with everything else for 4 years after the employee's last paycheck, just to be safe. In Texas, new hire reporting must be submitted within 20 days of hire. Please check the new hire reporting guidelines in the state in which your company is located. Under the EEOC guidelines, all records related to the hiring process must be kept for at least 1 year following the date the employee was hired for the position in question. If a claim or a lawsuit was filed, the records must be kept for as long as the action is pending. With that being said, I also recommend hanging on to hiring documentation for the 4-year period, along with the rest of the employee's payroll and other information, since there are a number of different guidelines and deadlines associated with the various areas of the EEOC Commission. For example, if there is no FEPA office in the area, the deadline for filing a written charge of discrimination is 180 days. But if there is an FEPA office in the area, the deadline for filing is 300 days. Maintain all ADA-related accommodation documentation for at least 1 year following the date the document was created or the personnel action was taken, whichever one comes last. Generally, maintain all ERISA and HIPAA-related documents for at least 6 years following the creation of those documents. Maintain all payroll records for at least 3 years and any other documents relating to the employee's personnel actions for at least 1 year or while any type of litigation is still pending. Maintain OSHA and its related records for at least 5 years. Maintain all hazardous material records for at least 30 years following the last day the employee worked at your company. This is because of the long-term latency period for some types of illnesses caused by exposure to hazardous materials. All personnel records should be kept for at least 1 year following an employee's last day at work. These records should be kept for at least 4 years following the period covered by the records. When purging files, please remember, your company is responsible for securing this information throughout the life of the document, up to and including when the documents are destroyed. When purging files, please do not simply dispose of them in the trash bin or use an old strip cut shredder. Shredders are more sophisticated now with the cross-cut and the micro-cut shredding styles that can be found at your local office supply store. And this is a better way to properly purge and dispose of the files. 3 years for this, 4 years for that, 1 year for other statutes. What do? I recommend maintaining all employment records in a scanned digital format for at least 7 years after the employee has left the company. If an employee has been exposed to hazardous materials, I would keep all the documentation related to exposure in a digital format for at least 30 years. That way, all of the various common statutes of limitation have expired for most of the common reasons to bring litigation against your company. Further, I highly recommend you consult with your licensed employment attorney and discuss the specific needs of your company and its employee files. Want to get respect from your employees? Do you even know if your employees respect you? One of the most important qualities in the workplace is respect. And mutual respect can equal to better communication and higher morale. Everyone feels like they are on a real team when respect is mutual. As a business owner and manager, do you know if your employees do or don't respect you? Are you experiencing bouts of insubordination? Negative comments about you, especially on a personal level? Do employees suddenly go silent when you enter the room? I can review all the reasons why respect is so important, but I don't want to waste our time. Let's talk about things you can do to earn the respect of your employees. In order to receive respect, you must give respect. Treat all employees fairly and let them know publicly as well as one-on-one that they are a valued member of your team. Take the time to listen to employees when they come to you with ideas and concerns. Look them in the eye and give your undivided attention to that employee. And that includes not answering your cell phone should it ring when an employee is in mid-sentence. Treat employees in a manner in which you would want to be treated if the roles were reversed. More than likely, if the roles were reversed, you would want to be treated with respect. Business owners can immediately lose respect and, in my humble opinion, never get it back when you talk negatively about employees when they are not in your presence. Frustrations, negative feelings, negative words, and bitterness have no place, again, my opinion, have no place in the office, especially when you as a business owner need your employees to respect you and your authority. Refrain from speaking to employees about another employee. Refrain from expressing yourself in a negative manner in front of employees. Show a strong, confident, respectful presence to your employees and managers at all times. Respect, respect. Be firm when making management decisions. You will get more respect. As a business owner, adjusting your position when receiving new or updated information is acceptable and probably expected. But as a business owner, constantly changing your mind or changing your mind after talking to that same employee may lead employees to believe that you are a weak business owner or manager. And weak leaders are not respected. After you make your firm decisions, be sure to enforce and follow up on those decisions. Business owners, please understand that employees look forward to that 30 or 60 minutes of lunchtime away from work, even if that time is spent at the workstation. Show your employees respect by allowing them to take their lunch break with minimal disruption. There are methods to deploy to respect the lunch break and let the employee know what you need from them. This is respect building behavior that will go a long way between you and your employees. There is no right or wrong way to lead a group of employees. No matter what style of leadership you have, do it in the same consistent manner with all employees. Don't talk down to one group of employees and then accept insubordination from others. Leaders are human beings, just like your employees. Business owners who admit they are wrong display humility and courage to their employees. Expressing your human side aids in gaining your employees' respect. Don't nitpick, micromanage, criticize, or demean others. No one's opinion is silly and should never be thought of in that way. Same is true when someone is wrong. Business owners who are respected by employees know to respect and listen to their opinions. Take the time to understand the employee's point of view and ask questions to help you better understand how that employee formed that opinion. Personal story. I was tasked with screening job applicants and I enlisted the help of a new manager working under me. That manager chose an applicant that, based on her resume, I knew she was an unqualified candidate. Instead of talking down to that manager or ridiculing him, I let him know that if he thought she was qualified, he should call her into the office for an interview. After our team, which included the business owners, interviewed her, one of the business owners turned to me and said, "Who chose this applicant to come in?" I easily could have thrown that manager under the bus, but instead, I don't remember, I said something that she accepted. Later that day, I pointed out to that new manager what red flags I saw in that resume that led me to believe she was not a good fit for the company. Instead of using the time to ridicule him or throw him under the bus, I used the time to educate him. Respect, not ridicule. Employers can learn a lot from employees just by shutting up. Listen to your employees and trust that they will complete their assigned tasks. The more trust you have in your employment team, the more respect you will gain from them. Are you one of those business owners that take credit from the employee's idea? Nothing shows disrespect more than a manager or business owner stealing an employee's credit or idea. Gain your employees' respect by publicly congratulating them for their contributions to a project, meeting a critical deadline, or saving the company a lot of money. Not only does this foster respect, it shows that you as a business owner is part of the team. Keep an equal playing field for all employees at work. Include all necessary employees in meetings and events, especially those related to group projects. Also, allow all employees the opportunity to participate in committees or similar teams. Use a professional tone of voice with employees. Business owners, be aware of your body language and your expressions during all interactions with employees. There are some astute people who are able to detect the slightest hint of what may appear to be disrespect, even if you as a business owner are not aware of it. Decide if you want to be liked or respected by your employees. If you want to be liked by your employees, you are going to have a long, miserable road ahead of you in management, since not everyone is going to like you. As an employer, respect is paramount. Setting the tone of the organization, accomplishing tasks, and maintaining a positive work environment depends on it. The day you lose the respect of your employees is the beginning of the end of a productive, healthy work environment. Respect is cultivated over time. Results won't happen right away. Maintaining consistent positive traits like the one I discussed will earn you more respect over time. Let's talk about employment gaps on a job applicant's application and why employment gaps may not always be so bad. This video idea came from YouTuber Employee of the Month. Employee of the Month, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch one of my prior videos and leave this wonderful comment. And instead of talking about a flurry of stories where I can tell you that despite of an employment gap, I hired someone and they turned out to be this wonderful, dependable employee, what I'd like to do instead is help you as an employer or a decision maker by letting you inside my head, which could be dangerous by the way, and tell you my thought process, what I'm thinking as a business operations manager when I see an employee who on paper seems to be great, but they've got employment gaps. When you have a job applicant that has employment gaps, that means that you've got work to do. And this is where it helps to have your company's HR processes written and in place so that you will be able to quickly and efficiently separate the good candidates from the candidates your company would rather pass on. Having your HR foundation in place can help you save a lot of time and money as it relates to verifying employment, knowing what questions to ask, on and on and on. Before I get into my thought processes as it relates to hiring someone with employment gaps, please know that this information may not work for your company if you do not have the proper policies and procedures and processes in place. That includes establishing your company's HR foundation, clear job descriptions, fine print on your in-house job applications, and I'm going to put a link to a video that will help you with that right here. Obtaining authorizations from job applicants that will allow you to speak with prior employers and obtain important information. Creating your company's employee handbook. All of this should be in place before you hire your first employee. First, I would require that potential job candidate to fill out your company's in-house job application, including the fine print at the bottom. When you're looking at the completed job application, scan that application, look at the length of time they spent at their prior employers. Did the applicant hold similar positions within that person's career path? If so, how long? How many employment gaps do you see? What is the length of each employment gap within that application? I would schedule a preliminary phone interview with that applicant, especially if I thought they had some possibilities of being qualified for the position that I was looking to fill. Now, during that preliminary telephone interview, I would not get into too many details as it relates to what you are looking for to fill the position. This would just be a fact-finding phone call. Mainly, I would look into things like why that person had so many employment gaps. When they give you an answer, I would not go into detail with regard to why they're giving you that specific answer as their reason for having these employment gaps. That's something you save for the in-person interview. Now, you've already contacted the person, they're here sitting in front of you, and you're ready to conduct your in-depth interview. In between employment gaps, I would ask that person, what have you been doing since your last job? When you ask someone a question like this, it is up to you as an HR person or a manager or business owner. Do not accept 1 or 2 word statements. Well, I was looking for a job during that time. I would be looking for something along the lines of, while I was in between jobs, I was professionally networking on LinkedIn. I was watching YouTube videos to help me improve on my skills. I was scanning the Workforce Commission's website looking for employment. If the applicant regularly changed jobs, in addition to having employment gaps, i.e. job hopper, link for that video right here. Again, inquire as to why this person consistently changed jobs and do not accept 1 or 2 word answers. Better opportunity, more pay. Inquire about the specific job duties that were expected, the tone of management, company culture at the prior employers. I would ask the job applicant to self-critique themselves. Would you hire you? Again, don't accept 1 or 2 word answers. If that person says, yes, I would hire me, I would like them to go into depth as to why they would hire themselves. Ask the individual, why do they believe they are not employed at this time? Why do they have these employment gaps? This is where you'll be able to drill down and ask even more specific questions as they come to mind. Drill down on the core job skills your applicant will need to fill your available position. And ask the applicant, has any of their skills deteriorated during this employment gap? If they say yes or no, does your company have in place any type of skills test? Most important, ask if the applicant would be willing to sign your company's authorization that will allow you or your HR team to contact the prior employer and ask that prior employer to submit to an interview and include any documented employment evaluations, attendance issues, or any other issues related to that employee while they were employed at that company. And I'll tell you one thing that will help you as an employer get truthful information. Here's a great question. Will I regret hiring you? Always ask why or why not, and please do not settle for 1 to 2 word answers. When looking at job applicants with employment gaps, there's a lot that you must take into consideration. It's easy to tell someone to hit the bricks as soon as you see an employment gap. Dismiss the myth that hiring someone with an employment gap is a bad thing, because it's not. If you want to know more about business operations, business management, human resources, and other topics related to running a business, click on one of those play links. Click on one of these click on the playlist.
One eternity later.
Click on one of these playlists. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe.